We're back to the Total Education Celebrity Show, powered by the Simply G Media Network. You can go to TotalTutor.net for more information. Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook, and also SimplyG.com for more information on G.J. Reynolds, the playful and powerful warrior. And I'm telling you, it's so interesting how when I first spotted this query and I said, oh my gosh, then I saw the first thing when I saw Better Off Dead. I said, that's the one I remember the most, and honestly, it's one of my favorite movies. So I want to welcome the program, celebrity Diane Franklin, and also author, Better Off Dead, Last American Version, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Diane, thanks for calling.
Oh, thank you so much. I am thrilled to be on your show.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you, and especially it's so cool to see like this 80s rebirth. So many people are coming back out in the 80s, and honestly, you guys are more interesting than the ones today in a lot of ways, because some of them, they just really, not a lot of people are putting out great, great films like this that are kind of, that will stand the test of time. We're seeing nowadays these just kind of generic type films, especially when we're talking about high school. Look what's on now, Diane. It's awful. I mean,
right.
I don't see 20 years from now they're going to go and do a bunch of movies. I mean, do a bunch of reunions and stuff. Not at all.
Well, it's so interesting because for me, like, first of all, I didn't really see so much of the difference until my daughter, she makes films. She's a filmmaker, and so she's exploring the media now. And the interesting thing is, you watch movies now, and they have to go much quicker, and the pace has to be faster because of we have a shorter attention span on the internet. So when you're watching these older movies, it looks like, oh my gosh, they're taking so much time, and they took their time with the actors, and it's because it wasn't as rushed. Today it's more rushed, as I can see. But I do think that my gosh, it brings back such wonderful memories for people in the 80s. And I do think that the 80s really was a time where we were exploring different things that perhaps today we're a little bit more timid to explore. So especially the movies I was in, more of a kind of cult, funny, kind of interesting movies.
I don't think movies, pictures are going to take the chance on those, and ultimately they get the ones that are just going to get the quick buck, and yet they're not going to stand the test of time. So let's talk about your career, Diane. Basically, when you were a child, did you always want to be an actress?
Ever since I was little, and I tell you something, my parents, they were European immigrants. They talked like this with a German accent and an Austrian accent, and they were like, what are we going to do with this child? I was always like running and around and dancing and singing, and I was a very happy little kid. I just had a genuine happiness, and I think my parents always were happy to see me so happy. And I was such a good girl, I think they just really wanted to help me continue that. And so I wanted to be an actress ever since I was little, and they listened to me and they helped me. And so, but I have to say, we had no connections. There was nothing, we didn't know anybody, and so I had my interest starting at 4 years old. That's how early it was. I knew.
So when did you start going after gigs? Did you do a lot of plays in school when you were younger, or were you a child actor real young, or when would you say the first kind of professional acting gig happened?
Right. Well, actually, what happened was, and I don't know if you know this. I came out with a book in my life, and I talk about my history of how I started and how I acted and how I made in the business, which I really recommend to people. Anybody who wants to be an actor or ever thought of being an actor should get this book, only because it's so interesting to see the choices that you have to make along the way. And for me, when I was little, I just wanted to do it, and it wasn't the right timing, but I kept taking singing and dancing, and just because I so enjoyed it, it really was just the act of acting and dancing and singing was such a passion. And so finally, at 10 years old, my parents were like, okay, we have to do something. This child is like, we've got to get her, we have to figure out how to get representation. So it took us a little while to find the right person, but I started with my first modeling job at 10 years old to break into the business. The only way we knew was to start with modeling. We didn't know any other way. We just sort of the first step.
Interesting. So again, the biz goes in that way, and again, the book. I want you not to be as detailed because people have to pick up the book. And the fact is, Diane, people have to learn about this business, and we see so many people chasing after it, thinking I'm going to be the next big thing. No, you're not. It's honestly, when I look at where my radio show's gone, which is far not your career, but I'm getting there. I'm doing well for 4 years doing this, but ultimately I had a lot of late nights staying up late, not making a dime in this, and now I am making money in it. So it's ultimately you go ahead.
Mm-hmm. The most important advice for anybody who wants to make it at anything is you have to give to get. You have to give and you have to put out, because first of all, it's not just an altruistic head. It's the ability to, you need to show people what you can do before they say, yeah, you can do this. Or even for somebody to say, I'll pay you to do this. So it's not a mystery. You just have to do it. And so if you don't enjoy it, then I don't know if, it really comes to this thing, would you do it for free or would you do it to be paid? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And if you have to be paid, well, then maybe that's not the position job one. You have to love it.
And in this field, like I said, I have had talk to so many actors that were in other fields, and they said, I don't make the money I was making before, but but it is what it is. This is what I'm doing, and too bad. And this is my passion. This is what I love, for sure.
There's also a false hierarchy of the ability to feel like, as you get older, you should be making more and more money. That is not life. That is not life. It's not the older you get, the more money you make. Sometimes you make more, sometimes you make less. If you live your life based on money, then you are never rich. You are rich when you gain experiences in life and you are sharing it with people around you, whether that's family, whether that's friends. That's richness. Seriously. I mean, because money will come and go, and if you value yourself on that, you have to value yourself on what you've learned, who you are, your character.
Well, absolutely, Diane. And it's a situation where, as I said before, you really have to search for yourself, find yourself, and really know this is what I want to do. And if you're going out there with like ideas that you're going to be get rich quick in this business, it's never going to happen, and you're doing the wrong business. This is an art. This is an art just like writing is an art. This is an art just like painting is an art. Again, this field is something where you have to love it, because it's not going to pay your bills forever, and you're going to constantly struggle in so many ways. So, Diane, basically, you said 10 years old. When was your big break then? At 10, you went ahead, the modeling you went and started modeling at 10. When did you kind of finally get your break in acting?
Well, it was funny because so I started with modeling, and then everybody else grew and I stopped. So that kind of went, okay, so much for that modeling career. I moved on to commercials, because that to me, that was like, as far as I knew, that was the next step. Whereas, there are other ways to get work. It's just in New York at that time, that was the conventional way. I mean, when I went I was auditioning, like when I would go on auditions, I would go with like Lori Loughlin and Brooke Shields and Elizabeth Shue, and like we were all acting at the same time. Wow, and this was sort of like that's what people did. Now today, it seems it's almost more interesting, because what happens is people get discovered through college and student films. They get a part and a role in that. And maybe you never did any acting until then, but then they get involved in college film, like you say De Niro, I don't know if De Niro ever did a commercial, but I know that he did a student film, and that's where people started seeing his characters, and they went, oh my gosh, look at this intensity, look at this guy, because they got to see it first. It's not about, it wasn't like suddenly he was on the street and somebody went, oh, he's talented and he's a great actor. They saw his work. So he did it in student films. So the key for any person who wants to be an actor is you have to show people, whether it used to be just do plays and let people see your work, but now you can do plays and television, theater. I mean, you could do YouTube, you can do student films. There's many more venues to show what you can do. So I did commercials. I did a play in New Jersey with Jo Beth Williams, and she played my sister. I keep saying my mom, but she was my sister. And there were, but I'd have to say my big break was actually a soap opera, and that was As the World Turns. and that was the first time I played a character. Her name was Lois Middleton, and she was a manipulative teen. She got pregnant, and she hid her birth control pills in her sneakers, and she was trying to get this character Betsy into trouble, which was completely ironic because as a teenager, I was actually very naive and very innocent. So it was really funny. Every time I would do this role, and the girl Betsy, she was much more worldly because she had been like a regular on this show. So that was really a funny experience for me. But I was recurring, and that's when I started to learn how to play characters.
Interesting. So, and what?
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, I was going to say. So, your parents, what did they think? Essentially, they said they raised a good girl, and this is the role you get first. Big role you get.
That's funny. That's interesting because my parents were always really supportive of what I wanted to do. I guess it's because we all knew it was acting and make believe, and they were very proud of me. They were very proud, and they really loved me. And I mean, all I ever saw was total support. I never felt like it was so interesting because they weren't pushy at all. My mom was like, Bev, I'll take you on the train there, go to, the city, and okay. But, she was like, she would take me on auditions, and then my dad worked in the city, so I would meet him for, or as I got older, I went by myself and met my dad. And so they were, I guess, somewhat more hands-on. They were just always concerned that I was safe, and that, I think that was more the case. They just wanted to make sure I was safe because they knew that I had a good head on my shoulders and they could trust me. And I had been doing it so long that I knew what to do and what not to do. So the roles, I think they just, it was funny. They were good sports about it. And I think being European, they never had a problem with maybe the sensuality or the sexuality. It would have been more the violence that they would have been more like, oh, I don't know if you want to do that. But I don't know. It's kind of a funny interest. But it is interesting how your family, it either works well with your family or your family doesn't want you to do it and you have to kind of be an adult and do your own thing. So it's a good question.
Absolutely. And so from there, people saw you in this role and this helped get more work, right?
Mm-hmm. Which brings me to my first feature film, which I got the lead in, which was Last American Virgin. And that was like the biggest step of my career as far as I was lead. I wasn't even like a small partner film. I was the main character. I was the girl who guys fell in love with in the story, and it was a very kind of risque film because there's nudity and there's abortion and there's drugs, I guess, in the movie. So there's a lot of sensationalism about it, and so it was. But when we did it, it was funny. We didn't even know if it was going to get distribution, really. I mean, it was one of those films that, there were so many other films being made at the time, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Anything that was made by a studio was guaranteed great distribution. So for us, when we did it, we were thinking, well, maybe, who knows if anyone will ever see this film. And it became sort of a cult hit later on. Like now, today, it just came out in the UK recently, and it's affected my career in a lot of ways.
Well, Diane, when we get back, I guess we'll have to talk about that as well, especially with our 2 UK stations, and maybe we have to bring you back just to talk about The Last American Virgin. So we have a lot of different things to cover in specific ways in your first interview, hopefully many on the Total Education Network, because it's just such an interesting situation. So you're listening to the Total Education Celebrity Show, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back to the Total Education Celebrity Show on the Simply G Media Network. Again, you can go to simplyg.com for more information or totaltutor.net. And I'm with celebrity Diane Franklin. And very interesting, we talk about the Last American Virgin. And all these movies, we can lead into, I guess, a monthly segment to talk about them till, again, then I'm going to ask her friends to come on the show because, again, we have so many different things to talk about because these are such cult classics. I could talk about them for hours on end, but ultimately, you're right. The Last American Virgin, do you have a huge fan following from that one as well? We're talking about Better Off Dead, which, but which we'll get to. But The Last American Virgin, I mean, flock to this, right? And still talking.
But I do have to say that even TerraVision, Last American Virgin, the great thing that I was able to experience in my career was, first of all, it spanned from really the center of it was 1980 to 1989 when I finished with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures. I did do some work after that, but that was really the golden time of my career because that was when I represented an 80s teen. And that was sort of like you can go back and you can look at the films that I've done, and then it gives you a reference of what it was like during that time period and what it was like to be a teenager.
Right.
But what I was so fortunate to experience as an actress, and it is the idea that I had so many different kinds of genres, whether it was drama or comedy or horror or even just really goofy movie, a horror spoof kind of a film. So I've engaged a lot of different people in my life, and that's one of the things that's really wonderful about having a page on Facebook, because what's happening is I am the center or the focus point of all these different people who are brought together based on different genres. And so it's just like going back to the 80s and say, okay, remember this film, and
right.
What do you think of that? And by the way, if anyone's interested, you just go to Diane Franklin on Facebook and look for a black and white picture from Better Off Dead. And that is me. It's actually my site. So if you listen to this and you really want to, become part of the group here and find out what I'm doing, there's so much going on. I'd love to have you be my friend. All right?
Awesome.
And that's really me answering. I actually read every single email. It does take me a while, though. It's really funny.
So it's definitely a passion of yours, and like I said, and that's a great person to see. That these fans they're not going to leave you. And the '80s fans, ultimately, we could go through all the different teen idols in the '80s, and unbelievable. So basically, you said you did. So after you did The Last American Virgin, then you did Amityville, or did you do Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? How did it go? I guess timeline wise.
Well, it's interesting. Okay, so. Then after I did, right after I did Virgin, I did Amityville. So I did a horror film next. So at the time, nobody knew, Virgin had not really come out or was out just a little bit, but Amityville came very quickly. And the thing about Amityville was I had never done a horror film, and I always thought it would be a really cool experience to do one. And the reason I say that is because as an actress, you want to play a lot of different parts. And so how often do you get to die or come back to life and haunt? Or, this doesn't happen. So it's only in the movies that you get to experience this amazing thing. So I thought that was something I really wanted to experience as an actress. And so where some people might be creeped out, I really was excited about doing it. But the thing was that this movie was based on a true story, the DeFeo murders, and it also had some very sort of delicate subject matter, and that was that I had incest with my brother in the film. And so, again, this is something that not every actress perhaps wanted to audition for or felt comfortable about. And so I talk about that in my book in a more sensitive, real way. But I think that the reason why I was able to do that role was because I didn't have a brother. So I didn't have that awkward, weird feeling that perhaps some other actress would.
Interesting. Again, you went after it and definitely took the bull by its horns in those two roles. And then things kind of, I guess, got a little bit more it changed your roles after that, right? After those two, where you got, again, Amityville helped you as well with Last American Virgin, that you're really starting to be known as this teen, this teen that people wanted to get to know, so more and more opportunities came your way.
Well, the other thing was at that time was people could see that I could handle a lead, and that also the characters that I played were very, very naive. And because I was over 18 and I could play so innocent. That was, that's an archetype. That's something that people will, you see that written over and over and over again, the innocent and the person who's just, inexperienced. And so there's a lot you can do with that role. But after that, so still, I'm trying to still break in the business. You're seeing, even though I'm getting leads, so there was nudity in Amityville and there's nudity in Virgin, and I was like, when is this going to stop? So then what happened was I started getting a lot of television work, and I did like a movie of the week called Summer Girl, where I was the lead in that, and that was wonderful. So I played up with Barry Bostwick and Kim Darby, and I play this evil babysitter that kidnaps the kids and seduces the husband and pushes my boyfriend off a cliff and drugs the mother, and it's like very dramatic. So, but that was a great role, and I played sort of a schizophrenic, but it was seductive and, again, just a really fun part. And then I also did a movie of the week where I had the lead called Deadly Lessons, and I played a farm girl, an innocent farm girl who comes to this town, and my boyfriend was Bill Paxton, and it was with Ali Sheedy and Dina Freeman. He was on like Too Close for Comfort, I think, and Nancy Cartwright, who plays Bart Simpson, who's like the role of Bart in the Simpsons. So it was like the beginning of everyone's careers. I mean, I think Allie had just finished War Games, and all of us are just young, up-and-coming actors and just wanting to do really good work. And I have to say that at the time, in the 80s, actors really wanted to do good work. It wasn't light. It wasn't silly. It wasn't like... Right. It wasn't for the money. It was a time of the passion was very important in cinema. And I think that's what you see when you're talking about the 80s films, is passion was very big, even if it was over the top or if it was, very real, gritty. It was passion. It was a time of passion. And today, it's a different head. Maybe it's more like, I guess we have more. I don't think passion is the focus yet, and it probably will go back again. But I think every generation changes. It looks at the generation before and says, "Oh, I want to define myself, so let's forget this." The generation. So, like the '80s were very ups, the '90s were very low key, very grounded, serious. The music was very. Minimal, and not, like you got the, everyone was back playing guitar on stage as opposed to these big wild bands and big shows of the 80s. So every generation we bounce back and forth, but it's fantastic. I mean, I think that's what makes, each generation very, very special.
Well, absolutely, Diane. So from there, again, you're getting these opportunities, and I guess more of the roles become more teen roles. So it looks like the 80s changed in a lot of ways, from more dark to more, I guess, comedy. Would you agree? And
well, here's how it goes. Beginning of the 80s, very dark, gritty, real, but started with those teen films, that John Hughes time, all those films John Hughes did, and teens were getting lead roles in films. This was not happening really before the 80s. Before the 80s it was like teenagers were Freaky Friday, and it was like girls were tomboys. They weren't sexual,
right.
Sexy. Suddenly the 80s comes and teens are now sexy. Phoebe Cates, just became a whole different world. But by the mid-80s, it was also a time of women's liberation. It really was. Women, even I as an actress, and I talk about this in my book, the time where, remember the 80s were like, women were wearing power suits and sneakers. I can be in a man's world. And so here you start in the 80s where there's this, I play this feminine, girl that's so the stereotype of a young woman. And then by the mid 80s, we're now having Monique Genet, comedy, funny. It's like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures, The English Princess. So the 80s then turned into this really fun, upbeat, cool, playful time, and but it was also a transition for women as well. Women were like, by the mid-'80s, I could be Monique Genet. I could say, hey, let's, I'm going to fix your car, and I'm going to, get you to, push you to go after your dreams. And I became more of a female hero, I guess, in this sense,
Well, absolutely, definitely, Diane. So from there, the opportunity, I guess, would you consider your biggest break Better Off Dead in your opinion from Remember?
I think Better Off Dead was my. I hope I'm remembered from that film the most. I think it's only because it really matches my personality. I'm such an upbeat person, and I'm really, I think, closest to being Monique Genet as any character. So if I should look like this, because then it would be very nice for you to just imagine that I am really French, So, I would say Better Off Dead was probably the most memorable role. Although Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures got me the most exposure, most people know I think about that film. But if you haven't seen Better Off Dead, it is not a scary movie. It is a comedy.
It is
hilarious.
The funniest.
It's hilarious. Yeah. And it changed television even. That movie created the whole, iCarly, Drake and Josh, the Amanda Show, because the gentleman played opposite me, and Danny Schneider, who tortures me in the movie, he runs Schneider's Bakery, and that he was, Nickelodeon television, and that sense of humor and that kind of really just funny jokes that are not meant to be. It's just situations that are funny. It is really started with Better Off Dead, with Savage Steve Holland creating that script. He is a genius. He's wonderful. I'm so flattered and happy that he cast me and that I know him even today as a friend. He's just wonderful.
And it's amazing when you think about those things, for sure. And so, I'm remembering more and more the storylines of it. And honestly, it's because, again, you're kind of flashing me back to the last time I watched the movie. And it was the role and the thought process, and ultimately a guy looking for someone else and then finding you in so many ways. But it's the teenager high school movie that again goes, I think, is related to the 16 Candles, to all the other ones, because ultimately those are ones where it was a little bit dirty in ways, but ultimately it was the 80s. It was truly the 80s, and
80s had that obviously that there's some sex in the 80s. It reflects the time period. But the thing that's so interesting with Better Off Dead is, it was a sleeper. When it came out, it wasn't as popular at all, and it became a movie that people from in college loved, and they passed it to their friends, one after another person. And by the, college movies, I think at that time when people were able to watch VHSs in their dorm rooms, and they would just get together and watch it, and it was a feel-good movie, and it made everybody feel really happy, and you could watch it any time and it would make you feel good. Even if you knew the story, it's such a quotable movie. And it really stood out at the time. Now, I'm going to tell you, one of the reasons I think it didn't do well with the critics at the time, or perhaps was the accolade, got the accolades that it maybe should have, is because during the time in the 80s, critics really had a lot more power with film, because people couldn't watch a lot of these movies at home at the beginning. And so when you went to the theater, you paid your good $5 to go to the movies. You put your money down. And so a critic couldn't say, this is a great movie. The best they could say was, I thought it was funny, but they felt like if you're going to spend your money, you're going to spend money on something that's really worth it, like a Sophie's Choice or I don't know, maybe Kramer versus Kramer, like go and spend your money on something good. But, when video came out, suddenly it was like, oh, come on, we all have different tastes, and if you want to laugh and you want to be happy and you like this film, you've got to see this. So I think that's where it was just the media and the way we watch things really affected the popularity of this film.
Well, I can't believe we're running out of time, Diane, but I guess it will save us to come back again and talk more about what's going on. But I know all my listeners
pleasure.
out have to go ahead and purchase the book. Where can we purchase the book and learn more about you, Diane?
Okay, so first of all, the book is called Diane Franklin, The Excellent Adventures of the Last American French Exchange Babe of the 80s. And if you can't remember that, just go to Amazon and put Diane Franklin book. Diane Franklin, very easy. And you can also find it on Kindle. And that's it. I guess you could find it through online Barnes & Noble, but Amazon is the place to get it. You cannot get this in the bookstores, only on Amazon and Kindle. So it's an amazing book. It's 8 by 10. I have tons of pictures in it. And the great thing is that when I did this book, it's like from my heart. I knew it's like a walk through memory lane, how I became an 80s babe. But I have chapters on Bill and Ted and Last American Virgin and Better Off Dead and TerrorVision. And I have these specific chapters, and I rated the chapters so that if you have kids, you could say, only look at the PG-13, no rated R, which was restricted in the 80s, right? Now they have M, it's R. So I was considerate to my audience, and it's more the subject matter than the, there's nothing too risque in here. So, but I do talk about every aspect of my career, and I tell you, it is an unbelievable book. The reviews have been fantastic. So, I think you'll never see anything like it. I just had to tell my real story, from my words. It's got my cadence. I wanted to feel like people come to Starbucks with me and hang out and we talk for 2 hours.
All right.
You probably can see I could do.
Absolutely, Diane. Good talking to you, and we'll definitely stay in touch, and we'll have you back next month. So take care.
Lovely. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to the Total Education Celebrity Show on the Total Education Network, powered by the Simply G Media Network, and we'll be back in just a moment.